now.
Hey everyone, I'm Jackson. I'm with Omar, my good friend. We're kind of gonna go over. Well, first, you thought we were gone because football's over. No, not only is there the FCF, we got some great FCS action going on in the lower level of Division One. So yeah, it's a busy weekend. If you didn't already know what was going on, now you do because you really couldn't miss it this weekend. And yeah, there was a lot of action. It's fun. Let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. It's just great to have more spring football, especially since the last two springs have had failed leagues. Put a bad taste in our mouths.
I'm I- I'm still Vipers all the way. Like I really hope The Rock can save the XFL because spring already there's already that post football depression that the combine kind of helps you through a little bit halfway, but not really. It's not the same. But yeah, this is good, and this is like college football. We saw like kind of semi pro. This is real college. Like these are schools we would watch in the fall on Saturday. So yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, let's get to it. So first, let's just talk about the first two main awards. Excuse me for FCS. We have the Walter Payton, the Buck Buchanan, and the Walter Payton Award was established in 34 years ago. Sorry, excuse my math. Not a math guy. I'm a history guy. 1987. So yeah, 34 years ago, and consistently it's been a quarterback's award. There have been used to be a little bit of a running backs award, a nice healthy balance between running backs and quarterbacks, but recently, dating back to 2004, all but one winner has been a quarterback. Has been a quarterback. And Jackson, do you have any guesses at who the last FCS winner was, or the last non-quarterback winner was? He's a star in the NFL now.
Cooper Cup, right? Wide receiver
Yep.
from Eastern Washington.
Yeah, Cooper Cup was the last non-quarterback to win it, and then the last running back in general, which kind of shows a shift. We see the shift in towards the passing game in the NFL and the FBS over past time. Maybe it was magnified even more earlier in the FCS because the last running back to win it was Jamal Branch on Colgate in 2003, and that Colgate team owns a distinction as the only Patriot League team to make the FCS title game. So that was a little bit of history in the Walter Payton Award.
A little bit of history with that, and also I just want to point out that year that Cooper Cup won it was the year before Carson Wentz was drafted, which says a lot about how good
Yeah.
Cup did. So for a non-quarterback to win it, and then for it to be in a year when like the highest drafted FCS player ever is having his final year at NDSU, that's pretty impressive. And if you were like me from a year ago, you really didn't know much about the FCS from like besides NDSU. The first NDSU player to win it was actually Trey Lance, the upcoming first rounder this last season. So you have to admit, like it's really impressive, like the kind of depth that we see, and it's not just the Dakotas that are pumping out these guys. It's it's everyone in the FCS.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mix, really. You see some household names, like Armani Edwards, who's the last two, or not the last, the first two-time winner, I believe, of it. There's been multiple two-time winners. Armani Edwards and Jeremiah Briscoe from Sam Houston State in 2016 and 2017. But really, that's kind of like what you should look for. A lot of the guys here played on contenders, and it's kind of like the Heisman. Has only had one player on a losing team ever, Paul Horning in '56, and a lot of players are on contending teams. So look for that too this spring in terms of the Walter Payton Award. And maybe not unlike, but unlike FBS, there's two separate awards for offense and defense. So you have the Heisman, the Walter Payton's offensive Heisman, and the Buck Buchanan is the defensive Heisman, and that one's been around a little bit later than the Walter Payton Award. It's been around since 1995. And an interesting fact about that is there's only been one defensive back to ever win the Buck Buchanan Award. Jackson, do you have any guesses on who this might be? It's a Jaguars legend.
I have absolutely no clue. Oh man. I'm trying to think of any Jags defensive backs. I have no clue. Who is it?
Rasheem Mathis. Jaguars great. The veteran Jaguars player was the only defensive back to win in 2002. So it's normally like a linebacker and defensive lineman award, which is really surprising because you have some guys that can really change games in a heartbeat. That's usually where it comes from, defensive backs. So you get a good interception return. So that's a little bit of history there in the Buck Buchanan. If you don't know Buck Buchanan, look him up really because really important to the NFL's history. He's the only I guess the first, not the only, the first HBCU player to be drafted number one, I believe. You might have to fact check me on that, but he set history in some way.
Yeah, honestly, I couldn't tell you about Buck Buchanan's NFL history, but I know that I've got the list of some of the winners right here, and probably the ones that most of our listeners will know is Jared Allen, the longtime great defensive end. He's a 2003 winner from Idaho State. So it's not just it's these guys. I don't know if any of you got the chance to watch the Senior Bowl, but there was that D3 offensive lineman. Like if there's talent, like the NFL will find you. You know, if there's talent, and so there's plenty of talent on these FCS squads, and it's awesome that that FCS has their own awards that kind of can recognize them for it.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Like the common phrase is, and Jackson knows it too, is if you can play, they'll find you. And I think that's great, especially in the spring. It like magnifies it to that point. And I just fact checked Buck Buchanan. He was the first black number one draft choice in professional football in general, not just HBCU, but in general. To kind of show you,
pretty good. He was pretty good.
Hall of Famer. Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer. To show you sort of how visionary the AFL was in comparison to the NFL, the New York Giants took him 265th overall in the 19th round, and the Chiefs drafted him number one. So the AFL, I mean, I just love the history of the AFL. Great league.
That's awesome. Good job.
Yeah, no, exactly. But Jackson, you have some. We both have some Walter Payton Award candidates, and you want to start with your front runners, and then I'll go back with mine.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a lot of great performances this weekend. One that really stood out to me, if you haven't watched much of the FCS, it's a very running heavy league. You're going to see a lot of great running back performances, and that's awesome. We want to talk about those. We want to talk about the Dion branches, and all that on here. But I've got one. When I see a good receiver or a really good quarterback, or excuse me, Jamal Branch. I think I said Dion Branch on accident. But anyways, regardless, if I see a great passing performance or a great receiving performance, that's kind of the first thing that I want to point out. And man, I don't think anyone kind of shined more than Gabe Douglas, the receiver out of Tarleton. He had 7 receptions for 190 yards and 2 touchdowns, including an 86-yarder. Is a wide receiver from Tarleton. They ended up winning 43-17 versus New Mexico State. But he really seemed to put up some great numbers. You can watch him again this weekend versus Dixie State on ESPN+.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like for him to have a performance like that against an FBS school, and that's something I want to bring up later on in terms of FBS competition with this award. Like that's amazing, and we already saw nothing's out of the ordinary with Devontae Smith winning the Heisman for the first time since '91. So who knows if we'll see a receiver in this pandemic spring season. My first guy too also comes from Tarleton State, but I'm going to draw off the fact it's a quarterback award and go with really quick. Cameron Burston, who had an amazing game against New Mexico State. He had 252 passing yards, those 2 touchdowns to Douglas, and 79 yards rushing on 4 carries, 12 yards lost. I mean, he gained 91 yards. He had an absolutely fabulous 70-yard run against the Aggies. So it's kind of funny because Tarleton State being an independent, they likely won't get a playoff bid given there's only 5 at-large spots. But I mean, the way they've been playing in playing like last week in the kickoff, or not last week, the 14th in the kickoff game, taking McNeese State to overtime, then absolutely blowing out New Mexico State. Like, I mean, you got to watch out for the Texans, especially when the WAC comes back with the return of the WAC.
Yeah, absolutely. Tarleton just really had a really dominant performance. And I think what was really surprising to a lot of people, as you said, considering that, I saw NMSU and I was like, wait, is that New Mexico State? Like they're FBS, like But yeah, they played and they dominated against them. I mean, it was a convincing performance. I'm gonna go ahead and keep it in the quarterback position. Hamp Simpson, the quarterback from Furman, he ended up having a great game, 14 of 22, all the way for 207 yards and 3 touchdowns, which, like we were talking about earlier, like anytime that you see, a great passing performance like that needs to be recognized, because these guys, they did it. I mean, these guys don't always get the most reps and or the most chances or second chances after that. Furman had a convincing performance too. They won 35-7 over Western Carolina.
Yeah, and the Paladins, not only do they have one of the most unique names in all college sports, I don't even know what a Paladin is. But they're also number 10 in the FCS Stats Bowl, so definitely a contender out of the SoCon. And if you know, the SoCon was the breeding grounds for Georgia Southern, App State, and just other great teams throughout the years, including Wofford too, which Wofford didn't really have any great performances. But I'm going to go to the running back position, and I'm going to go to a school that most fans know, North Dakota State, because of Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, and just their absolute run of dominance since they've joined FCS. And I'm not going to the quarterback position, but I'm going to go to the running back position with Kobe Johnson, who had 16 carries for 114 yards. And Jackson, like you said, that the FCS is a run-heavy division, and I think when people think FCS, they think about the Missouri Valley Football Conference, which is absolutely, it's like the strongest football conference in FCS, I think, by a mile, followed by the Colonial Athletic Association. But Kobe Johnson had 16 carries for 114 yards and a touchdown and a 54-yard run. And what's kind of evident here is it looks like, well, we had Trey Lance being the sort of playmaker last year. Last year, it looks like a guy like Zeb Noland would be more of a game-managing type quarterback, as he went 9 of 18 for 74 yards. And for those of you that are fans of the Big 12 and remember the name Zeb Noland, he transferred from Iowa State. But I think if North Dakota State continues a run of dominance, and absolutely look for Kobe Johnson to be that running back, because it's sort of like a perfect storm with non-quarterback players where you have to sort of not only put up the numbers as a running back, but also be on like a national title contender. I mean, that's kind of why we saw Breece Hall get so low in the Heisman rankings despite leading the country in rushing. And that's why we saw Najee Harris be lifted up, because he was on a title contending team.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, NDSU is the easy name to recognize when you're talking FCS. And so, about when they do have great performances, like obviously we still want to talk about them, because like NDSU it's insane, the powerhouse they built, the FCS, and who knows, maybe someday they'll step up to the big boys in the FBS, but we'll see. That would be fun.
Yeah, so in addition to him, my next guy, I think this one's kind of a reach, and you can disagree with me on this one, Jackson. But I don't, probably the biggest game of this weekend for FCS was South Dakota State versus Northern Iowa. It was just an amazing kickoff game, as you had the fifth and third ranked teams in FCS playing on a Friday night. Really good exposure. And my guy was Pierre Strong, another running back. He had 91 rushing yards, but he had the game-winning 1-yard touchdown pass to overtake the Northern Iowa Panthers, who have had some close calls through the years against both Iowa schools, both Iowa FBS schools. So if you're familiar, but he had 91 yards and 31 receiving yards. So I think if he has bigger games and has some good games against North Dakota State too, like it's kind of like that perfect formula of being a national title contender and just like big games against big opponents. I think Strong can really build off that great performance and clutch touchdown.
And if you wanna see a really good example of poor clock management, just go ahead and fast forward to the very end of that game by UNI's offense. That was a little rough at the end.
Yeah, they certainly showed their rust. I mean, and I guess that's going to happen when you haven't played, since literally it's amazing how these teams haven't played in over a year. Like it's
Yeah,
wow.
that's true. I'm just giving them a hard time. I just thought it was funny. I was watching. I was like, man, are we going to see like a dramatic comeback? How awesome would that be on the opening night of the FCS? No, it just kind of fell flat. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and go to my next guy. I'm going to go with Quay Holmes, a running back from East Tennessee State, a 24-17 victory versus Samford. He had 19 carries, 125 yards, and 2 touchdowns. These numbers don't pop up at you, especially in a running heavy league. It doesn't like pop at you like, wow, that's crazy. The reason I picked him is because a lot of these schools, they've had multiple running backs, they've been splitting carries a lot. Nichols, and their 87-3 victory versus Lincoln, they had 8 different players rush for a touchdown. James Madison had 5 running backs have 10 plus carries, and another one with a 68-yard touchdown too. But Quay Holmes, there was no one with more than 7 carries, and that was the only guy with more than 1 carry. So it was really impressive that he was carrying this on his own. He didn't have fresh legs. He wasn't splitting it. And they didn't exactly have a pass heavy game either. They had 186 passing yards total compared to 125 just for him. I just thought that was impressive.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, that's kind of like the way anyone's been following the NFL has been noticing the lack of really, I guess, one-man backfields in the NFL, and in terms really area-defining running backs other than like Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I was about to say Derrick Henry is the exception on this. Like,
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Look at the Bucks, Ronald Jones and Leonard Fournette, like splitting carries.
And Shady, can't forget Shady McCoy. I wish they played him in the Super Bowl.
All 0 carries in the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, brief aside on Shady, and I know this does have much to do with our podcast, but I think it's funny how he's a leading rusher of the 2010s, but he's largely a forgotten man when you look back in NFL history. It's really kind of sad because Shady can ball. I like Shady.
One thing that I kind of compare it to is, and again, we're kind of getting off topic, but look at when Emmitt Smith joined the Cardinals towards the end of his career and brought a lot of leadership. From what Fournette has said, like Shady brought a lot of that leadership to that backfield and to that running back room. So that's kind of what I'm thinking Shady was there for. Kind of like Emmitt was with Arizona or Phoenix, I guess, back then.
They're Arizona, I think by 2003 or whenever. Yeah, I think they were. Yeah. Well, my last guy.
Every day.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they do represent the state, but I guess my next guy, just a brief side of my next guy, I'm gonna go with Tommy Schuster out of North Dakota again, picking out of the Missouri Valley Conference because, like I said, it's the SEC of FCS football. And Schuster had 3 touchdowns in their opening game, their first ever game as a Missouri Football Conference member. And I mean, he only had 118 passing yards, but the touchdowns stick up. If Schuster can put balls in good spots in the red zone and continue to tackle on those numbers without interceptions like he did against Southern Illinois, who was ranked 24th coming into that game, I mean, then I think look out for the Fighting Hawks and Schuster especially too.
You stole my guy. Yeah, I mean, he was, Schuster had a great game, and 3 touchdowns is a lot for the FCS. You can watch him next. They actually play NDSU this weekend, 1 Eastern time on ESPN Plus this upcoming Saturday, so you can watch him then. I'm gonna go with Jalen Jones, the quarterback out of Jackson State. I'm gonna give this kind of watch list award to Dion too. I mean, how many people can work at Barstool and also coach a football team? Like, I mean, Dion did phenomenal. And I don't have the score written down, but it was wasn't it like 53 to something? Like, it was a convincing victory.
Yeah, 53. Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a follow-up question with that, Jackson. So the SWAC notably is not participating in the playoffs this spring, and they haven't for like the longest time. And the MEAC as well will not be participating. One, because they did plan, but a lot of teams canceled. But in general, they have a Celebration Bowl, and I'm just wondering, like, do you think it's harder? You think that's a hurdle for HBCU players to be candidates for the Walter Payton and Buck Buchanan Awards? Just not playing in the playoffs and sort of, I wouldn't say off to themselves, but playing for something different, like a different goal.
Okay, so one question. I did do like a lot of research on these awards, but when is it given exactly? Is it given like after the season concludes or kind of before the championship? Kind of like because it's a whole different system in the FCS. Is it
I'm
given?
not I'm not certain.
Okay, but
But
it's after the playoffs start though, right? It's kind of like it's after that.
I believe
Okay.
so, and I'll have to do research on that myself.
Yeah, so I think that I think it is definitely going to be a hurdle for some of the HBCU players, if only because you're playing for a different goal. Like, what is this? Like, this is you're not fighting for a roster spot like you do with preseason games in the NFL, but you're also like not competing like for like I mean maybe to spoil someone else's season is your goal. That's not really like that motivating, you know, for beyond one game. But yeah, like that's tough when you know you're not gonna you could have the best season ever and you're not gonna go to your own playoffs. And we're not talking like if you don't already know, this isn't like the college football playoff in the FCS or excuse me in the FBS where like four schools go. Like this is this is their postseason. Like a lot of schools go to this. It's not quite like March Madness level, but there's a good number. I think it's how many is it again? It's like it's not six.
It's 16 this
16?
spring. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, there's a good number. There's 16 schools that go to this thing. So you would be going if you were, you know, had committed to being able to go. So, yeah, that's tough because now they're probably not going to be in consideration as much. If not because they won't have a playoff performance, then it'll be because they're just not playing for much. Like you're not getting paid out there. You're not going to have a chance at the playoffs. Like what's the point for beyond the seniors, you know, beyond the seniors that this is their last time playing? Like why play?
Yeah, I will say this. I think it is about the money because one, attendance-wise, the SWAC as a conference is the best attended FCS conference there is. You look at some of the stadiums that they play in, like Jackson Veterans Memorial Stadium out in Mississippi, where the Jackson State Tigers play. I mean, it was built in the 40s. Mississippi and I think Mississippi State, either one of them played games there occasionally in the capital because of its size back in the day. So I mean, you have a huge stadium there, and you have the pageantry and the history, the rich tradition of HBCU ball, and then you have the classics too, which are still happening this season. Geez, I'm in academic mode. This season, where you have the Bayou Classic moving to Independence Stadium outdoors, so they can hold more people, and the Magic City Classic at Venerable Legion Field, the Old Gray Lady. You have these classics too that bring in a lot of attendance, a lot of revenue, a lot of pageantry, and a lot of tradition, and also too the TV contracts. I think the SWAC is the only conference, FCS conference, to have games as of now on ESPNU. Excuse me, ESPNU, like the linear ESPNs, pretty much, and that includes a SWAC championship.
ESPN Plus.
And ESPN Plus. Yeah, you have your regional networks, and ESPN Plus is like online distributor for those. But you have the Magic City Classic on ESPNU. We have a couple Jackson State games on ESPNU, and the SWAC championship, which will be televised May 1st on ESPNU as well. So I think the money's there, but it's sort of, I think the HBCUs recognize, like the SWAC, recognize that I guess they're their own brand, you know, in relation to the rest of the FCS.
Yeah, basically. So, and if you're curious about when this all wraps up, the 16 team bracket is going to be announced on April 18th. That's two Sundays before the NFL draft starts. So like right before then is when it's going to be, and it's going to be 4 rounds over the next 4 weekends. Championship game is on May 15th. If I remember right, isn't that going to be not Jerry World, but it's going to be at like the Cowboys practice facility in Frisco? Do you know, Omar? I feel like that's where the Alliance was gonna have their championship. I know that because I was planning to go. So
it's gonna be not at the practice facility, but the soccer stadium that I forget what the MLS team's called.
Okay, never mind.
Toyota Stadium, Toyota Stadium. The
Cowboys facility there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Toyota Stadium. I don't know who plays there. I'm not an MLS guy, but it'll be there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So And kind of scheduling, we've touched on the swag, kind of scheduling for beyond this. Yeah, we kicked off this weekend, technically 2 weekends ago, but we did, kick off for most of the conferences. The Big Sky is going to have 12 teams play 6 conference games each beginning this weekend. And then on March 6th, the CAA, or Colonial Athletic Association, they're going to have 11 teams play 6 conference games each. And then on March 13th, finally, the Big South, 5 teams going to play 4 conference games, and 2 teams from the Big South also played at least 1 game in the fall. So we'll see how that goes. Maybe some of them won't be quite as rusty.
Yeah, no, we'll see. And as much as I wanted to include Kennesaw State's quarterback and fullback, since they run triple option down there in Atlanta, I just feel like the amount of games is a hurdle too. Only playing a 4-game season. Well, not 4, because Kennesaw State is a non-conference game this weekend against Shorter College, who I think is a D2 school out in Georgia. But that's just a hurdle still, playing less games.
It's like a glorified 4-week pro day is basically
yeah.
Trey Lance for the Trey Lance game, that was this fall, where NDSU played 1 game, and then Trey Lance said, "I'm out of here." I don't go get paid, but yeah, it's I mean, that's such a short season. You're just gonna be kind of getting your rhythm by week 4, and then you're gonna be done. And then we'll see if they are healthy enough to play in the fall, because 4 games can put a lot of wear and tear on you. So we'll see if they can play in the fall too.
I totally agree, and I think maybe we'll see someone have a Jarrett Patterson like stretch in those 4 games, or maybe there'll be a Justin Fields effect where those 6 games are just so defining that they gave him votes for the Walter Payton Award.
Yeah, who knows? It would have to be a heck of a performance, that's for sure. So we'll see.
Yeah, so moving on to the Buck Buchanan Award, and we'll try to get better with like defense, because we know defense isn't the sexiest. We're sorry, but defense is cool. I played defense in high school, and a couple of guys that impressed me this weekend was one guy in particular out of North Dakota again, Devin Krasnowski, who had a 36-yard fumble return for a touchdown, along with 5 tackles and a tackle for a loss in that win against Southern Illinois. So that's one guy I'm looking at. For the Buck Buchanan Award. It's like, really, I think it's gotta be like that sort of Tyrann Mathieu effect, where like the Honey Badger, where you're making plays and flipping the field in terms of forcing fumbles, picking off passes. Krasnowski's a linebacker, but even then, forcing fumbles and just returning them back and creating your own offense out of defense, as ironic as that sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna go ahead and go with Donovan Banks, yet another Tarleton player in that victory versus New Mexico State. He had 2 tackles, but he also had 2 interceptions. So a pretty good game. Didn't get any return yards off of those, if I remember right. But anytime you get 2 interceptions, yeah, that's a great game.
Yeah, and so hopefully, like you said before, only one defensive back has ever won it. Rasheed Mathis out of Bethune-Cookman. So if he's really a guy like a ball hawk, I think for a D-back to win it, they'll have to add some return yards to some of those interceptions. They can't just be a 5-yard return that you got to be taking to the house.
Pick 6 or 2 also.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. So my next guy, actually my last guy, is Jackson Hankey, North Dakota State. We're going to stay in the Missouri Valley Conference. And no, we're not a Missouri Valley Conference bias podcast. They filled up the slate, and they have a lot of the influential teams in the poll. But Jackson Hankey, a linebacker, a little undersized, 6'1", 219, had 14 tackles and half a tackle for loss in their win against Youngstown State, coached by Bo Pelini, actually, for those of you that remember. Again, just another performance. This is a guy that's all over the field and really like a team leader on defense. Another guy to look out for in terms of the Buck Buchanan, but we'll see. If you see any defensive performances we missed, let us know, and send all hate mail, especially UNI fans, Northern Iowa fans, send all hate mail to Jackson here.
One more guy I'll point out is Torrance Williams. He's a defensive line for Elon. He recovered 2 fumbles in that game versus Davidson Wildcats. So yeah, good job by him for recover and 2 fumbles in the same game. He's a defensive.
And I will note with that Davidson game, the Davidson-Young game, something that's interesting happened over the weekend. You mentioned James Madison early on in the game against Morehead State, a 52-0 blowout. Morehead State doesn't offer scholarships, as is the case with Davidson. Small private school in North Carolina, and that one is a bit close for comfort for the Elon Phoenix. Yet another unique nickname, and they're ranked 24th in the polls currently. But that one was a close call against Davidson, only a 2-point win. So that's going to be interesting to see there. But those 2 fumble recoveries might have been the difference in that close game, shutting down Davidson's upset bid. So I have a question to ask really quick, Jackson. Just
sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. So my question is, there are teams in the fall that played, obviously, like a few teams in general, some guys that sort of put up some like not great numbers, but against really elite competition. Do you think some guys should be put up for consideration? And some numbers that I have up here, guys like Trey Self, a guy who had 19 total touchdowns in 10 games for Stephen F. Austin, and who played 4 games against some good FBS competition, UTEP, UTSA. Both were competitive games for those teams. UTEP wasn't horrible for once, and UTSA, of course, made the First Responders Bowl, and he put up 285 against UTSA. In those 4 games, he had 675 yards and 3 touchdowns. Or a guy like Braylon Smith, who in the fall put up numbers for Central Arkansas, put up 283 in the nationally televised kickoff game against Austin Peay. Threw 3 touchdowns against UAB, 226 and 3 touchdowns against North Dakota State, and 402 and 2 touchdowns against an Arkansas State squad that beat Kansas State. So do you think guys like that should be getting consideration for the Walter Payton Award, or should we just focus on the spring?
Oh, absolutely. Like it's based off of performance, right? So if you're performing well, and it's against lesser competition or whatnot, like then I mean he's still doing it. I mean, this isn't preschoolers we're talking about. Like this is you're not playing on Thanksgiving versus your little niece. Like I mean this is still you're competing, and they're doing well. And if it's so easy, why isn't everyone doing it? So absolutely. And with as far as that NFL, you were kind of breaking up a little bit, but with the part that I picked up with the NFL. Just look at Jimmy Garoppolo, Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz is the easy one. Ben Roethlisberger. I can't remember where he went, but yeah, I mean Antonio Brown, non-Power 5 schools, I think are the latter 2. But yeah, like I mean they're still doing it and they're performing in the NFL still. So why not?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll see. Like, I do anticipate that there will be some very elite performances in the spring, but I really think these guys should get some credit, And another guy too that played 4 games in the fall, that's sort of been the talk of Conference USA lately, and in the offseason, FBS offseason, is Bailey Zappi, a guy who threw for 300 yards plus in every single one of his games against FBS schools in the fall, which were against Louisiana Tech, New Orleans Bowl team. Texas Tech too. They take Texas Tech down to the wire, and I forget who else they played FBS, but he threw for over 300 yards in all his games and just balled out. So that's like another guy to consider. It's an interesting element where you have these teams playing independent schedules and playing against like truly like the FBS and balling out. And like one last guy I have is Peyton Mansell out of Abilene Christian, who had 609 yards in 3 games against the FBS competition, which included a 200-yard performance against UTEP and a 279-yard performance against Army. And the only quarterback the only team to throw for more against that stout Army Black Knights defense that allowed 14.8 points per game and 160 passing yards a game was West Virginia, who threw for 286 in the Liberty Bowl. So Mansell, really had a great performance against a great Army defense. Maybe that should be put up for consideration along with his FCS exploits in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. One more guy I want to get to that did not play this past weekend, but is going to start playing March 6th. The Villanova quarterback, their first game is versus Stony Brook on March 6th. He's a Daniel Smith quarterback He's a transfer from Campbell University, where he set records for total offense, rushing touchdowns, and passing touchdowns. Threw for over 3,600 yards last year. I'm excited what Daniel Smith to see what he can do over there at Villanova.
Yeah, for sure. And the CAA looks to be pretty exciting because, I mean, a lot of people know about James Madison for sure. They've been in some conference realignment talks. And over the years, too, Maine went to the semifinals in 2018. UMass came from the CAA. This was when UMass was really good and not the laughingstock at FBS. But just really good football being played out on the East Coast in the CAA. And one guy, too, that I have just hasn't played yet in the spring, but played a few games in the fall, is Citadel's quarterback Brandon Rainey, who he struggled against FCS schools. They kind of keyed on to Citadel's option, but I have faith that he'll put up huge numbers. And when it comes to option quarterbacks, when it comes down close to the goal line, they can get some good volume statistics in terms of touchdowns. So look for Rainey to tack up maybe 10 or so touchdowns in the fall. And if Citadel can make a run in the SoCon, then we might have an option quarterback as a finalist for the Walter Payton, which I would absolutely love to see. The option does not get enough credit.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I'm excited to continue, doing these recaps kind of each week, and yeah, we've got a lot of action this weekend as well. There's going to be several games on Sunday. Southeast Missouri State, Eastern Illinois, UT Martin, Murray State, Tennessee State, Austin, PA, and Texas Tech, Tennessee Tech, and Jacksonville State, all of which will be on ESPN Plus this upcoming Sunday, February the 28th.
Yeah, I'm excited for just something to do on the weekends. Not much to do at the academy in a pandemic. I'm kind of upset that the Sunday games are all at 3 o'clock for some reason. It's like, can they throw us a bone and stagger some of these kickoffs?
They staggered the Tennessee Tech Jacksonville State. That's going to be at 4 Eastern time. But all the rest, like, I mean, can we get Scott Hansen to maybe do like a little red zone with it? Like, get something going on there. But yeah, I mean, it'll be fun. I'll need 3 TVs again for the first time since, like, I don't know, conference championship weekend, since they put all the bowls in individual slots, which I'm not complaining about. But yeah, and probably won't need it till, well, I guess no, we'll need it hopefully every weekend. So yeah, it'll be fun. I'm excited for a little Sunday action. This past Sunday, there was only a couple of games. It just felt so empty. It was like, what do I do? Like, this is rough. So
yeah, I mean, a plethora of well, not really a plethora, but a lot of options to choose from this Saturday and Sunday, especially with the Big Sky. Maybe the Big Sky can move some of these games later on, so we get some Big Sky after dark. Please do. But until next time, we'll be tracking these races for you. And if you have any suggestions or players we missed, then go ahead and hit us up in the comments or add us on Twitter. But just don't be too rude, please.
We're people too, I know that we're world famous podcasters, but come on,
Podcasters are people too.
Absolutely. And punters.
And punters, yes. We didn't spotlight any punters, but if there are any punters having Georgopoulos type games, then please let us know.
I can name a punter. I don't know his name, but whoever played Nicholas this past weekend.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
How many times did he have to punt? Probably like 8 times, because there weren't that many interceptions. Because I was like, oh, this is gonna be easy, a Buck Buchanan guy for Nichols. No, like there was like none. So he must have been punting like every day. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I'm gonna look that up really quick. Yeah, so in terms of punting for Lincoln, it's the last note here. Well, the quarterback play to start for Lincoln was very, very putrid. 12 for 21 for 20 yards was a team passing line. Like, I can't imagine a worse passing line. But their punter had only 8 punts, and he averaged Clayton Winkler averaged 29.4 yards a punt. But
that's not too bad. None inside the 20, which is not his fault. But
it's not his fault. But Clayton Winkler, hey, we'd love to have you on the pod. Talk about your groundbreaking performance against Nichols. Yeah, just your experience. Like, arguably being the MVP of the game for the Lincoln Blue Tigers.
While we're on the subject of Lincoln special teams, because everyone is, can we talk about Jay Marino, who kicked not a game-winning field goal, but saved a 87-0 shutout on a 32-yard field goal. Good job to him for not letting his team go scoreless in that atrocious performance.
Yeah, for sure. I want to wish the best to Lincoln the rest of the spring season. Hopefully it gets better, and hopefully you guys can get a win because it just so happens that you face better teams, and you just need a paycheck. These paycheck games happen, and you get big upsets, but sometimes you don't.
Does Lucas play at NDSU this year? I would definitely tune into that game.
I don't think they do. I think I don't think the Missouri Valley's playing any non-con games.
That's one of those games that I would get B-dubs on DoorDash for. Like, that would be fun. But, yeah. So, cool. Well, yeah, we're just going to be wrapping up and enjoy this great football weekend. And, man, we've got football all the way until, like, May. So, I'm excited. That's around when mini camps start and OTAs. So, yeah, the football never ends. What do you know?
Yeah, exactly. Until next time, unless my pal Jackson has anything to say, peace, love, and soul, everyone.